Alright y'all, welcome back to another Dragon Ball Sparking Zero video, and today we're talking all about defense, how to vanish, super counter, all the things right there to help you improve your defense in online matches and win more consistently. If y'all want to learn how to vanish like this on the screen, just back and forth, full Dragon Ball Z, we'll be covering everything here. I hope you guys do enjoy the video, and let's hop right into things. And I do want to confirm I will be talking about things in terms of classic controls, but if you have any questions because you're on standard controls, feel free to ask me in the comment section below and I'll respond as soon as I can. If not, someone else in the community may reach out to you as well. To start things off, we'll begin with one of the most basic forms of defense, and that is vanishing. At the end of the day, vanishing comes down to both timing and the amount of ki you have. Doesn't take that much ki, but if you get in a situation where you and your opponent are vanishing each other's attacks, if you run out of ki, you won't be able to vanish anymore and you'll get knocked back and left open for a potential combo, so you do gotta watch out for that as well. But besides that, the most important thing, like I said, is timing. Realistically, you could vanish almost anything in this game. You could even see right here in this clip, I vanished a Kamehameha, and you could vanish any melee attacks and anything like that. But again, you need to get that timing down. What I did to help myself improve my vanishing in terms of Sparking Zero was training mode. Training mode is really useful for a lot of these things, and you can set the CPU to do a lot of things specifically. So you see right here in this clip, I go into the specific computer options, and then we select one of these four options that are shown on the screen. That'll help you out with vanishing specific attacks. And once you get the timing for those attacks, I think that are very important. You see basically these attacks every single match almost. And with that, you'll get that general timing down of how to vanish things. Again, it's just right before the attack lands, and once you get that timing down for every single one of these, you could then start practicing on just general rush chains, right? And from there you'll be able to start vanishing more and more. It's really just repeating it over and over until you keep getting it at a consistent rate. Now, we also do want to keep in mind that there could be lag online, so if there's any delay, you may have to adjust for that a little. But besides that, once you get this vanish timing down, you'll be able to avoid a lot of different scenarios where you will just usually be knocked back and forth across the map. Now you could potentially get the upper hand, and this again has very little resources that is used, a very little amount of ki, so I really do recommend first and foremost learning how to vanish properly and consistently. That is going to help you so much in online battles and even just fighting against your friends as well. So feel free again to use these settings and get vanishing down. Now, the next thing we could talk about here is perception. You could do perception by clicking triangle circle at the same time, and you kind of go into this pose, and with perception you could pretty much just counter any melee attack and things like that, right? You are also able to use perception against Ki Blast 2. Now, this also does use 2 bars of your stock. If you see it right under your character icon, there is the stock. You build that up over the duration of the match by moving around, attacking, etc. I find that you usually will have a good amount of stock in a majority of the fights, so you could do that, right? And it's essentially just a way for you to stop enemy combos. If there's any drops in enemy combos, you could, low-key, you could spam it a little, and you are able to just really gain potentially the upper hand, or at the very least reset things back to neutral against your opponent. This is used a lot in online matches. You may have seen this before or already have been using it yourself. It's a very easy input, and it does not use anything in terms of like your ki or your meter, unless you are of course doing perception against Ki Blast specifically. The one thing I do want to mention though is you don't want to overuse it, because again, it does leave you open. So what I've seen online from a lot of people is they just use perception, leave themselves open, and then I'm like, okay, and then I just reach in and grab them, right? You could just grab them and then you start your own combo. So even though this is a nice little tool that you will be using a lot in online matches, you can also look out for it in your opponents and start your own combo. And that's kind of a little more of offense as well, but you want to make sure you're not caught yourself, because it is a little dangerous to do that, right? But besides that, this is a very useful tool that uses pretty much no resources at all. Actually, it literally uses no resources, again, unless you are specifically using it against a Ki Blast. You could do that in the air, and that's how you knock the Ki Blast away, or you could just straight up do it on the ground and just cancel that out, right? Very cool ability and very easy to use. I think once you get the timing for this down, you will have a good time in terms of stopping your opponent's combos online. Furthermore, you could do it when you're guarding an enemy's combo as well, and you'll be able to stop any of their rush attacks. Beyond that, there is one extra thing that comes with it, and that is the Sonic Sway. Sonic Sway is where you just are avoiding all the enemy's attacks, knock them up in the air, and sometimes you could just continue with the combo. Really, really nice and really, really cool. This also does not use any of your meter or anything like that. It's just more strict timing. It has to be literally exactly when you are about to receive an attack. Very similar to Vanishing. And when you get this down, it looks really cool as well, but you guys can see on the screen what exactly I'm talking about, and you may have seen this already. This is more something that you don't have to necessarily learn, but if you can get Sonic Sways down, that'll help you gain a huge advantage in battle. So make sure you at least know how to do it, which is still the same inputs as Perception. Now, the next thing we have to talk about is probably the most important defensive mechanic, but it also requires the most timing. That is super counters. So what a super counter is when you're getting attacked, you press up and square, at least again on classic controls, PlayStation, and essentially you're able to block the enemy's attack and then knock them back. That uses like no meter, no key or anything like that. And you could use it when you're getting attacked from behind, which you cannot say for any other defensive mechanic essentially. You have to learn super counter, or at least the inputs. Low-key, you are actually able to spam the input and land it successfully online sometimes. Not a very consistent thing, but you're able to get it a decent amount of time. So if you really are kind of like in a laggy situation or have to rely on that crutch, that may be your best circumstance. But I heavily recommend getting the timing down for at least very important or common occurrences like vanishing attacks and things like that, because it'll help you in so many situations. And again, especially when you're getting comboed from behind, you are just dead, or you'll lose like 3 HP bars, especially in a sparking mode combo, dude. It'll be over if you don't super counter. So that is quite important. However, you can actually avoid a super counter, which is really funny. You can actually super counter a super counter. If you take a look here, you could just go back and forth with that. I believe you should also be able to vanish the hit for super counter. Don't 100% quote me on that because I haven't landed it, but I assume you should be able to also vanish it if you get the timing down correctly. Either way, super counter 9 out of 10 times will help you just reset things back to neutral and make sure you just don't die. It'll be very important to get this timing down, so I heavily recommend to especially learn super counter. Probably the most important thing on this list, to be honest with y'all, because at the very least you can get away with everything else, and if you only know how to super counter, you could use it in placement and vanishing even, right? So make sure you learn this and you'll be doing really good. Next, we'll talk about revenge counter and how absolutely garbage it is. Please, I just recommend don't using revenge counter unless you're in a very niche situation. Let's say you're low on health and you're like, man, I just gotta get out of this. I can't rely on the timing. I gotta just get out. And you could use it like maybe periodically if you know you're not using it a lot and it'll catch the opponent off guard maybe, but it is a scam. It is the only defensive mechanic that uses skill counts, and you know that stock is so important for many other situations. Even though you build it up pretty quickly, just not really something I recommend, and it could be avoided by a billion different things. First and foremost, we talked about perception earlier. You could use perception against a revenge counter, and that is called super perception. Then the opponent knocks you back and it kind of resets things back to neutral, but then, oh, you know, I just wasted 2 stocks and I didn't even get out of the combo really. I mean, it does reset things to neutral, but you still take a okay amount of damage, right? Next, you could use a step in to avoid revenge counter. So if someone is anticipating you using a revenge counter, they could just step in and I don't know if this is necessarily intentional, but you see I right here completely avoid the revenge counter, and I just dive in and continue to combo him. So, at that point, it's like, oh, you didn't even do anything, essentially, and you wasted count again. In a situation like that, super counter wouldn't really be avoided by stepping, right? Speaking of super counter, you could also super counter a revenge counter. So if you see the opponent doing a revenge counter, you could just straight up super counter that, and again, they waste bar, and just take damage for it. So that's very fun. One other thing is you could sidestep a revenge counter, but from what I found, that's only if it's against a charge attack. So if you charge an attack up, you see the revenge counter, it's very slow and predictable. So you just could sidestep it. Then if you do it well enough, you could just get behind them and start a combo from them from behind them. And then they can't vanish or do anything unless they also super counter. So revenge counter is just so bad, man. It just like, it has no timing, which is nice, but you're just literally leaving yourself open if you're against a player who's at least decently competent at the game. And sometimes online it doesn't even land properly, and you could just like mash and continue comboing even if someone super counters against you. It's just bad. It needs to be fixed, or I don't know what they gotta do. Another thing is that the animation is the same pretty much for everyone's super counter. So if you learn kind of the animation and how it looks like, you just like, I don't know, man. You could just avoid it completely in 9 out of 10 situations. Revenge counter is very bad, very, very bad, unless you're using it against inexperienced players, man. I highly beg you to not rely on revenge counter like that, and rely on your actual skill stock accounts, right? Your blast stocks, right? Very important there. Some things could give you other abilities, even defensive mechanics we'll talk about later at the end of the video. That's not necessarily a universal mechanic, but anyways, revenge counter bad, don't use it. So from here, we'll talk about the last 2 universal mechanics that are not as big as the others, but could still provide you some use in these situations. The first thing is sidestepping. Sidestepping is not necessarily a defensive mechanic. It could also be used offensively, but there's a lot of situations you could use it. Let's say if you're guarding and the opponent's like trying to do a charged attack, or you see them like drop the combo, you could sidestep around them, and then you're able to get some little bit of iframes right there, and then you could start attacking them and open them up. Another way you could sidestep is if they do a homing dash, which is when they dash around you, come from behind, it could start a back combo. You can, if you get the timing right, you have to time it really specifically, sidestep at the same time they're about to get behind you, and then you actually end up behind them, and you could do a counter attack on them and start hitting them from behind. Sidesteps could be very nasty if you know how to use them correctly, and they could help you avoid a lot of situations and just cause you not to take damage. In fact, you just retaliate against the opponents. I recommend at least learning a little bit of the sidestep timing, practicing it with online, see what works for you. Will be very nice, right? I'm sure if you watch in my streams, you see I do sidestep quite a bit. Found it very useful in helping me avoid certain situations that could have taken a lot of damage in. So sidestepping could be good for you. And the last thing that's universal is just stopping a grab. If you time your guard at the exact same time, kind of similar to Vanishing, you're able to just kind of knock back a grab and then reset things to neutral. It could be useful, but grabbing is kind of a niche situation that really, I only personally grab when I'm trying to, well, if I'm using Dr. Gero, right? If you're hitting a Gero player, you could also do that. But when I'm trying to counter someone trying to use perception against me is when I go in and grab them. But from there, you could be useful to learn how to counter grabs potentially so that you could just stop them in general. Now, there are 2 final things that are specific to certain characters, but gives you almost a free pass in terms of defense, and that is Wild Sense and Afterimage. Some of these characters will have it, some don't. It is what it is. In these examples, I do use Super Saiyan Mid Goku and then Teen Goku, 2 characters on my ranked team. And with Wild Sense, what happens is, of course, you just vanish the attack and you knock the opponent back into the air. From what I've seen, usually cost around 2 blast stocks, nothing too crazy. But then Afterimage, I think, could get really annoying. Characters like Birder, Teen Goku, I think a lot of the fusions have Afterimage. And for a duration, you pretty much can't get hit by a starting combo. Sometimes you could avoid it, potentially by key blasting the enemy, or then maybe you could grab them, I think. But Afterimage can get very annoying very quickly. And when it comes to Afterimage and combating it, personally, I just play a more of a defensive role, reactive, wait for the opponent to start attacking me instead of rushing in and attacking them, because that'll just get you right into the situation they want you to, and then waiting until around the timer would run out so that you could actually start playing normally. It is kind of a stalling thing, but I think that'll help you combat that most well in terms of defense. Hey, this is Future Minato, realizing post-recording that there's also Explosive Wave that you are able to use with certain characters, costs 2 blast stocks, and that will basically create a barrier that you push the enemy away with. Could be very annoying, but that is another kind of defensive tool that you will have on certain characters, such as Corrupted Zamasu. I believe Jiren has it, right? Honestly, a lot of these top tier characters end up having it as well. So again, that move, Explosive Wave, is really good. Make sure you do utilize it properly. It's very easy to use and can interrupt almost anything. Very, very nice. From there, that is everything I can think of when it comes to improving your defense in Sparking Zero Online. If there's any updates, maybe I'll make a short or just an updated video in general. Let's say maybe in a few months we find out some new tech. We don't know for sure. It's still the first few days of the game, but a lot of these things come from Budokai Tenkaichi 3 as well. But now there's an online aspect to Sparking Zero, which I find very important. Either way, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. And that's it for me. We'll catch you guys in the next Sparking Zero content. Peace out.